Hello everyone and welcome. My name is Roberto Corona. I'm an Italian anthroposopher and astrologer, and in this video we're going to talk about the upcoming new moon in Pisces on March 19, a moon that brings back and concludes the series of winter stelliums that have made the winter season quite heavy. Now, as you can see, we have reached the last new moon of winter, which officially ends the first sequence of eclipses of the year, which has opened Pandora's box regarding the situation in the Middle East. Before moving on, let's take a look at the latest changes in the sky from the last eclipse on March 3 to the new moon on the 19th of the month. On March 6, Venus entered Aries, so we have a Venus in exile, which we will see in the chart is going to make a square with Jupiter. Jupiter, which turned direct again on March 11, that will try to make its beneficial influences flow more effectively, and we will see how. On March 19, we have the new moon in Pisces, which is taking place the day before the spring equinox, which, as you know, marks the start of the new astrological year. And not only that, on March the 20th, Mercury also turns direct, and for this reason we will find it basically stationary in the chart. Now, in general, this is a new moon, meaning that it represents the beginning of the manifestation process of the etheric forces of the Earth, which gradually increase with the waxing moon up to the next full moon that is going to be a full moon in Libra, taking place on April the 2nd. This is a very important moon because this is the first full moon of spring, which, as we know, we use to calculate the date of Easter. So it's Easter's full moon, basically. So let's tackle the chart. The sun and moon are located down here at 28 degrees and 27 minutes Pisces in the starry image of the fishes. And as you can see here, we can again appreciate another stellium in Pisces, this time formed by, of course, the sun and moon, followed by Mars and Mercury. What's special about Mercury is that, again, it is stationary, so it is basically standing still in the sky. But on top of that, it is in close conjunction with the North Lunar Node, which points to a karmic issue, as we're going to see. The two luminaries are also in an out-of-sign conjunction with Neptune and Saturn that are in the first degrees of Aries, and as we know, they have recently completed their conjunction. The new moon being in Pisces is, of course, ruled by Jupiter, the Lord of Pisces, and Jupiter, as we said, has turned direct again, and it is in the zodiac sign of the moon. And this means that the moon and Jupiter are making a beautiful mutual reception, so they are receiving each other in their respective zodiac signs. Jupiter is in Cancer. Cancer is the zodiac sign of the moon, and the moon is in Pisces, and Pisces is the zodiac sign of Jupiter. This is a very favorable configuration. And Jupiter is, by the way, can be considered a focus point, clearly standing out from all the other planets in the chart, as you can see. Now, concerning the aspects, Jupiter is making a trine to Mars in Pisces, but also a square with Venus in Aries. And lastly, the luminaries are making two sweet sextiles with both Pluto in Aquarius and Uranus in Taurus. And this is definitely a very harmonious stabilization of this chart. So let's talk about the meanings of the chart, starting as always from the physical significations. First of all, Pisces is favorable from a spiritual perspective, but not from a material perspective, since it brings chaos on the material plane. Chaos is confirmed by the conjunction of the sun and the moon with Neptune, which, being in Aries, the zodiac sign of the warrior, is related to war. So it is chaos and war, as well as chaos and water, because this is one of Neptune's significations. So the image of a Gulf War actually returns, as well as the mobilization of airports, also the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, not to mention that Iran aims among its strategies to hit desalination plants, so to cut off the water reserves of neighboring Middle East countries. Now, the mutual reception between Jupiter and the Moon, in fact, speaks of chaos, yes, but it is a chaos for defensive purposes, to protect the homeland and its borders, a strategy reaffirmed by the fact that Jupiter is making a trine with Mars, Mars being the god of war. So we have the protection of Cancer by the war of Mars. The effect of the great benefic could potentially also lead to the defense, protection, and care of the afflicted through concrete aid on the battlefield. However, Jupiter is also making a square with Venus in Aries, and Venus in Aries indicates that both sides now have a firm will to continue fighting. In fact, Venus in Aries is in exile and leads to choices that tend towards displays of strength. So literally, one chooses for Aries. One likes Aries because Venus is the goddess of pleasure, of what we like, of what we choose for. So we choose for conflict. And this is, of course, making a square attention with Jupiter that wants to bring help, basically. Now, this is also confirmed on a more psychological perspective by the fact that we have an excess of mutable water energy in the sky that brings emotional drama. And we have already witnessed to the stellium in Pisces that was already present, if you remember, in the last full moon, that was the eclipse on March the 3rd. So here, again, we are called to exercise compassion. That is definitely a good way to use all this Pisces energy. All this emotional drama can actually turn in compassion. A compassion that this time becomes an active compassion. Why an active compassion? Because we have the great benefic, Jupiter, that wants to help through the aid of Mars. Mars in Pisces that represents basically activism on a positive level. And in this regard, we can therefore hope for the start of humanitarian aid connected to movements for peace that are brought about by the moon's two sextiles with respectively Uranus in Taurus and Pluto in Aquarius. They are generational planets, so they involve many people that can represent this movements for peace that is going to create pressure for these aid to be effective. However, with this Venus in Aries, we must also be generally careful, I would say, not to make choices that put our safety as well as the safety of those we wish to help at risk. This is because all the emotional drama of Pisces can lead to very stressful situations. Now, this warning has to do directly with what we say. So communication is a very delicate topic here, because now I am looking at this Mercury. Mercury is debilitated in Pisces. It is stationary, so it is standing still. It has no speed, so this is bad for a planet. And it is sitting on the North Node. And this warns of possible statements, things that we say, that are capable of triggering serious karmic consequences. Why karmic consequences? Because we have the North Node, which is, of course, a karmic spot. Now, this aspect of karma leads us directly to talk about the spiritual meanings of the chart. In fact, the new moon is found in the starry image of Pisces. And in astrosophy, as we said many times, Pisces is the constellation of the Trinitarian principle of the Father, and especially of the law of the Father, that is the law of karma. So not only Mercury stationing on the North Node, but also this constellation, they are indicating this principle, karma. And in this regard, here, we find various indications that point towards the meaning of this karma, and that is sacrifice. This is the key word, sacrifice. We find it on a stellar level, but also on a planetary level. Now, on a stellar level, we find it because Pisces is the constellation of the thrones, also called by Steiner the spirits of will, and Steiner describes them as those sublime spiritual entities who gave rise to creation through the sacrifice of the substance of their will. So we literally have the sacrifice that we find at the beginning of the evolution of our solar system in this very constellation. But also we find this keyword again, sacrifice, from a planetary perspective if we look at the new moon that is making a conjunction with Neptune. Neptune being the planet of spiritual sacrifice, which in astrosophy represents the sphere of Buddhi, the life spirit that is a member of the human being connected to the forces of Christ. And the forces of Christ, we can also find them, of course, in Aries, being Aries from this perspective, the sacrificial lamb. Not only that, we are approaching Easter, so these forces of sacrifice of the sun principle are increasing by the day. So we have those two impulses of sacrifice coming from the sphere of the Father and the sphere of the Son, from the sphere of the constellation and from the sphere of the planets. So where do we find specifically the will to sacrifice? Of course, we find it in the redemption of the Mars sphere, a Mars in Pisces that here becomes a spiritual warrior capable of bravely carrying on the sacrificial impulse. Now, from a spiritual perspective, we are asked here to make a wise renunciation, a sacrifice, that etymologically comes from the Latin sacrum facere, which literally means the act of making something sacred. So the question becomes, what are we willing to give up? What are we willing to sacrifice on the altar of the spirit to ensure that karma is fulfilled wisely? Wisely because, of course, Mars is making a trine with Jupiter. That is the planet of wisdom. And this element of wisdom is also reaffirmed, confirmed at a heliocentric level, that is, from the perspective of the gods who have their seat on the sun. In fact, the close conjunction of heliocentric Jupiter on Saturn's north node continues. Therefore, the exchange continues between the sphere of Saturn, the spirits of will, the thrones, or the sphere of the Father, and the sphere of Jupiter, the spirits of wisdom, the dominions, or the sphere of the Sun. And this passage, this connection from the sphere of the Father to the sphere of the Son through the process of sacrifice inscribed in the celestial script, accompany us step by step to the mystery of Easter. As always, thanks for watching. If you want to support my work, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell not to miss out on future astrological insights. I am Roberto Corona. See you in the next video.